Well, they flat tried to kill us the next week. Varsity, junior varsity, freshman, it didn't matter. They absolutely tried to kill us. Yes, my name is Kenneth Doucette. I'm 71 years old now. I graduated from Barbers Hill in 1972. We moved there in 1963, the summer of 63. So I started at fourth grade and I attended Barbers Hill from fourth grade through graduation.
Kenneth, could you tell us the story about your family's decision to move to Barbers Hill when you were young?
My dad, who had graduated from Hull Zeta High School, the Hull Zeta Bobcats at that time, in 59 and 60 and 61 in those years, had players like Gene Walker and Terry Lenormand and Mike Johnson. These were studs. They were playing for the state championship every year, and my dad would take me to those ball games every Friday night. The head coach there was a guy named Elmer Hot Dog Thompson, and his first assistant was a guy named Joe Evans. And both of those guys play a part a little later in my life. And in 1964 or 65, one of those two, Hot Dog Thompson, Elmer Hot Dog Thompson, and Joe Evans moved from Hull Zeta to Orangefield, and the guy that takes over for them is a coach named Andy Griffith. So I want to bring that kind of all in focus and how it reacted with Gene Sharp a little later on. But we would go to these ball games to Hull Zeta. They were the Bobcats. They were red and black, just beautiful uniforms. And that plays a part in my psyche a little later also. But in 1963, my dad, we were living in Pasadena at that time because he worked in Deer Park. And he said, Kenneth, and to me and my little sister, we are moving. And I said, well, where are we moving to? He said, well, we're moving out to the country. And I said, well, where's that? And he said, well, it's a little town called Barbers Hill. And I asked him two questions. Do they have a good football team? And can I have a horse? Sure enough, we start going to Barbers Hill football games. And here are players like Randy McCullum and Bill Kilgore and Charlie Burgess and David Griffith and Raymond LaFleur and Charles Huffman and Mike Flowers and Benny Lansford. And I knew all their numbers, still do know most all their numbers. But those became my heroes after the guys that had been my heroes for Hull Zeta. And then I'm starting to become a Barbers Hill Eagle. And I'm getting indoctrinated to seeing all of the trophies and the history, the pictures of the old teams, the Gordon Spears and all of those people, the Guy Matthews and the Tinsleys and the Porters and all these people who were great players and great history for Barbers Hill. We started going to all these ball games, and it was super because at that time the high school, the elementary, and the junior high were all right there in the same place. There were probably 25 to 30 kids in a class. You know, we were small. Well, every Wednesday, the high school cheerleaders would start coming to the elementary, and they would sell the ribbons that you would saying, beat the Hornets or beat the Bobcats or beat the whoever, the little ribbons. And Johnny Hughes was the first time I ever saw anybody wear one down on the bottom of their jeans. It was Johnny Hughes, and that's the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So I started wearing mine that way. And so on Friday, they would gather everybody from first grade through the high school, and we'd go to the pep rally about 2:30. And out on the stage, the auditorium and the gymnasium were the same building and the same spot. They would set chairs up on the basketball floor, and there was a stage up there. And on that stage was where the football players would walk out every Friday wearing their jerseys and their blue jeans. And the cheerleaders would get up there in front of them doing their cheers. And the band would play. And Lloyd Kelly would talk. And then he would have the captains talk. But Lloyd Kelly would always get up there and tell you, y'all need to come to the game tonight because here's what we're going to do. On the kickoff, they're going to kick it off down here to this side over here, and we're going to catch it, and we're going to run up here like this, and then we're going to throw the ball all the way back across the field to Bobby Steck, and Bobby Steck, who runs a 9.500, is going to run for a touchdown. And sure enough, they would try that every week. He would have this trick play. You would show up to watch it, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but it made part of Barbers Hill. So we're watching Barbers Hill play, and there's the Ronnie Cottons and the Gary Wade Cottons and all these great players that you've seen and you've read about. Well, I actually got to see them play, and they were good. And so I became acclimated as I can't wait. So my 7th grade year, we're coached by a guy named Coach Malone, and we go out and we win. I played tight end that year and as a 7th grader, and we won every game except for one where we played the Baby Oilers out of Houston. And I don't know exactly how they gathered that bunch of kids up, but we were playing the best that Houston had. And they beat us, I think, by 1 touchdown, and, something like 20-14 or something like that. But we knew then, hey, we kind of got something going here. This 7th and 8th grade class, there's some talent here.
I've been told that football was truly a family affair during those days. Can you expound on that for us?
Charlie Leonard was out there with Jabbo, and they were kicking and throwing, and my dad would throw up passes to me and Wayne Follis, and to every time he'd come in from work, he's throwing us passes. And then we were playing. That's what we did. If we had a break at recess at school, we played football year round. At home, 3 or 4 kids get together, we're playing football. So we just had this mentality at Barbers Hill that this is what we do, and we're going to be good at it. And it was just a phenomenal growing up with Luke Durden and James Tilton and Kenny Fisher and, of course, Jabbo and Johnny Hughes and all the guys that we ended up playing football with as seniors. We started in the 4th grade. I mean, or at least they started before me, but when I got there, we just started growing. And then our 5th grade year, we got Tommy Grimes. Our 8th grade year, we got Armstrong. We started getting some players.
Everybody has some special memories of their first time meeting Coach Gene Sharp. Care to share yours?
They were at the old high school. 2-a-days were going to start, and I got to go. Dad Dad or Mom took me up there and dropped me off so I could be there to watch the high school practice. They're in the old dressing room, and all the players are out here. Coach Sharp's up front, and I'm standing in the back. And I'm standing there, I'm proud. And he starts talking, and then he stops. He looks at me, and he says, "Son, are you a Barbers Hill Eagle?" I said, "Well, I'm an eaglet. I'm fixing to be in the 8th grade." He said, "Okay, so you're not part of this team." I said, "Well, I play junior high." He said, "I understand." He said, "You come back next year. This is for the high school." And that's the way he did everything. Whoever was on that high school team, everything stayed in there. It was the coaches and the players, the managers. And as much as the parents wanted to be part of the thing, the Charlie Leonards, the Melvin Doucettes, the Bud Porters, the Earl Porters, the R.C. Porters, all of those people that wanted to be part of it, they were a part of it, but not in the inner circle. The inner circle was the players and the coaches, and of course the managers that he considered part of the team, just as much as the star running back or the star quarterback. The manager that was there every day was just as much part of that team. And in fact, he gave them jerseys. To let you know how Gene treated everybody, one day the managers didn't do something right. And the managers were James Schultz and Robbie Wright and David Finch. And he sent them around the pole. And that's just the typical Gene. So Gene Sharp becomes the head coach at Barbers Hill in 1967. And they start playing a different kind of football. I mean, it is smash mouth, hard nosed, stick it down their throat football.
1967, Coach Sharp's first year at Barbers Hill, was the only year he did not win the district championship. What do you remember about that season?
They went and they beat West Hardin. There were 3 good teams in the district that year: West Hardin, Orangefield, and Barbers Hill. And we beat Barbers Hill. The Eagles beat West Hardin. West Hardin had beaten Orangefield. So the last district game was between Barbers Hill and Orangefield. And the guy who was coaching Orangefield was a guy named Hot Dog Thompson, who was the head coach at Hull Zeta when they were all my heroes in the 60s and going to state championships. Well, this is for the Gene's first year there. They beat us 14-12 there at Orangefield. And Orangefield, even though it was a 3-way tie, for some reason, Orangefield got to represent the district and go into the playoffs, and we didn't.
Tell us about your first time meeting Coach Robert Capella.
It's the summer of 1968, and I'm mowing the yard. And Dad had an acre, and it was all grass except for the house. But he had finally, after years, bought us a riding mower. So I'm out there in the middle of summer or in August, mowing the yard, and up comes this purple old Chevrolet, I think it was, and out gets Gene Sharp, Robert Capello, and Carol Richardson, or who they call Pudgy Richardson, the 3 high school coaches. And they introduced themselves to me. Well, of course, I knew who Coach Sharp, Coach Richardson was, but I'd never seen Coach Capella. And the reason is he just moved there. And I should have known at that time that something in my life was fixing to change, because Coach Capello looked at me and he said, "Why are you on this riding lawnmower? Don't you have a push mower?" And I should have known then that all hell was going to break loose here pretty soon.
Coach Sharp had a stock speech every year at the start of two-a-days. Do you still remember it?
Two-a-days start, and Coach Sharp is up in front of us going to give the same speech that he gave every year that I was in high school. He would start out saying, "Men, this game is not meant for everyone." That's not a character flaw on anybody's part. But this game is different than any other game you're ever going to play. Any other game than anybody's ever going to play. This is fixing to be hell on you for the next 2 weeks. You can count on it, morning and night. And if you're going to quit, go on and quit now. Do yourself a favor and do us a favor. And if quitting is in your mind, go on and do it, because I promise you, you're going to.
I've heard unreal stories about how difficult two-a-days were. Would you give us some examples?
All I can say is that every day when I would get home from practice, my mother would look at me and say, "You need to quit." We didn't quit. Nobody in my class would quit. So I couldn't quit. If one of them would quit, I don't know. This was bad. To give you some kind of example, with Coach Capello, who he was the back coach, and he would coach the backs and the receivers. When a drill was going on over here, you were over here running in place. You didn't stand there and watch them. You were running in place. And then when they got through, they come ran in place while you were doing the drill, and he was after it. And then if you didn't do the drill right, he'd make you do this dead-gum 3-man roll thing. And you would roll over each other. Well, it's 112 degrees. It's the dews all on the ground. It was absolutely miserable, and you were exhausted. But you started going past where you thought you could do. So anyway, Coach Capello would have us do these drills where we were 3-man rolls. We're running in place. We're exhausted. He's pushing us past our point of we believe in what we can do. We are hitting like every play. You better be hitting somebody. It was almost like you better hit somebody in the shower. And he had these ways of doing things that were just torturous, is the only word I can think of it. Well, so that was us, the backs and the receivers. Down here on the other end was the lineman and Coach Richardson. Well, it started becoming a little bit adversarial, a little bit about, well, the backs are working harder than the line is. That started being that these guys down here are players now too. Well, Coach Richardson started working them hard. And they would push that blooming sled. I'll say this, we were blessed with good line play for the 4 years I was there.
What are a few things you remember that Coach Capello brought to the football program at Barbers Hill?
2 things that he brought to Barbers Hill with him that I wished he'd left somewhere else. And it was stop and goes or air raids. And you know what those are? Well, that was the first time I was ever exposed to them. But it was not like he wasn't running them with you. He wasn't jumping, he wasn't stopping, but he's running with you. And he's running around you. And it's like, how are you doing this? You mess up and he would send you around the pole. Well, it's 100 yards down there. You go down there and you run back. And when you get back, you better run down there. So you got a 200-yard sprint down there and back. And when you get back, it's your turn again for the drill. So, but of course, everybody else has been down here. They ain't rested. He's got them running in place. So everybody here is exhausted. I don't know how, I don't know how to describe it. It's just, it was unbelievable. And if you really messed up bad and he sent you around the pole, but he didn't think just running you around the pole was good enough, he would send a bird dog. And he'd say, go, get him. When he comes around that pole, you hit him. Well, if he didn't like the way he hit you, he'd send a bird dog after him. And then pretty soon you might have 6, 7 guys down there laying down there on the 20-yard line where they've hit each other and knocked each other down. And it was just, but it wasn't funny at the time at all. But now it's pretty comical. And he said, please tell me the truth. Please tell me. Were we too hard on you guys? And I said, well, Coach, you weren't too easy.
Kenneth, could you explain in detail how the tradition of the 50-50s was started?
Our freshman year, when we went to scrimmage Brenham, we got home about 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, the next morning, we had practice at 8 o'clock. So, and this is the way Gene did it. We were, of course, I was a freshman. We were at the new high school. He said, we're going to practice this morning at the old high school, on the old field. So we had to run from the new school up to Barbers Hill, probably 3-4 miles, whatever it is. Then we scrimmaged again and worked out. Coach Capella really got into us that morning. I mean, he tried to kill us. That practice that morning was just, as bad as all the other practices was, this one just stood out in your mind. So the next year, we went back to Belleville to scrimmage, and on the way home, after the 3-hour scrimmage and running air raids and all that, and we're riding home, and I was one of them. I said, Drexel, please talk to Coach about us not practicing in the morning. Because that practice was set up. Practice was already, we were practicing in the morning. We didn't know where, but we're practicing at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm telling Drexel and Lee Gill, the captain, please tell him not to let us practice in the morning. So they actually go up there and they approach Gene. Gene stands up, says, okay, I understand. They turn the lights on. Okay, I understand y'all don't want to practice in the morning. Well, that's pretty much fact. I mean, nobody's really admitting it, but we're just, well, Coach. He said, tell you what we'll do. You don't want to practice in the morning? We'll go home run 50-50s. How about that? And we said, okay. And it just shocked the hell out of him. Because 50-50s, okay, that's going to be bad, but it's nighttime. It ain't 112 degrees in the dew, running 6 miles. I mean, we're going to run 50-50s. And it just shocked him. He couldn't believe it. But we went out there, and Capella would be on the 50-yard line. Pudgy was on the goal line. And it'd be backs, linemen. And then backs, linemen. And you better run, or they quit counting. That didn't count. But we got through it. And I'm going to tell you, it ain't as bad it's not as bad as it sounds if you're in shape. It ain't near as bad as what they did to us on that Saturday morning. It became a tradition. It's almost by the time we were, well, junior and senior year, yeah. And it was just expected. But the first year, let's see, that sophomore year, the first year we did it, my daddy came up because he thought the buses had broke down or something, and lots of parents started showing up hunting their kids, because like me, Drexel Cox, our captain and fine tailback, lived pretty close to me. So he'd pick me up from school and take me home, practice, and everything. Well, I hadn't showed up. So Dad wakes up 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever that was. Says, uh-oh, boy ain't home. Did they have a wreck? Whatever. He comes up, there he comes school, lights are on. We out there running. And I mean, the parents just, worry about the kids. We're freshmen and sophomores. And I mean, whoever he carried on that trip was out there running. And it kind of become a tradition for at least while I was through school. But that's how that evolved. The best I remember it anyway.
What benefits do you believe the difficulty of the workouts gave the teams at Barbers Hill?
Jabbo said it in his deal where we knew whoever we were facing, they had not been through what we had been through. They had not worked like we had worked. And that was the reason, and that was why Gene and Capella and Pudgy would beat teams that we weren't supposed to beat.
What lessons did you learn as a freshman your first year on varsity?
And it comes time to start dividing after the first week, and at that time, Jabbo Leonard and I are the only 2 freshmen on the varsity, or in the varsity dressing room. Coach Sharp left me on the varsity. I really don't know why, other than they were just short of people. It wasn't because I was some kind of great player at that point. I was learning. I had a mentor named Paul Dunlap. Paul could have been very rough on me, but all he did was try and help. He wore number 37, and what a player. And what a good guy. But that class was all good guys. I was a freshman on that team, and they never once treated me any different than they treated each other. Dwayne Elliott was the quarterback. Robert Nayland was probably one of the best offensive linemen in Texas that year. David Hargraves, Gene Owens was a running back. Tommy Clark, James Clark, Dwayne Elliott were the seniors. If I left anybody out, I'm sorry, but Doug Morris, what a great group of people. And they taught me how to act, how to play the game with integrity, but the Barbers Hill way. So they taught me that if you're part of the team, you're part of the team, regardless of whether you're a freshman, a sophomore, a standout, or a guy that just is there every day at practice to help them get better. And they were just a classy bunch of guys.
1968, your freshman year, you were on the varsity football team. What are some highlights you remember from that season?
And we got beat 14-0. Well, Crosby was a 2A school that was good. And we held them to 14-0, but we couldn't score that night. Well, they flat tried to kill us the next week. Varsity, junior varsity, freshman, it didn't matter. they absolutely tried to kill us. Coach Sharp got mad at Paul Dunlap for some crazy reason, and he started me against Hampshire Finette. Now here I am, I'm just barely 14 years old, and we're playing a 2A high school, Hampshire Finette, coached by Les Caney, who is one of the finest coaches ever in Texas, and we beat them. We beat them. Not because of me, because shortly after, I don't know, probably midway through the first quarter, Gene put Paul back in, and we won the ball game. 12-8, I believe, was the score. And we were all so happy because we could not go through another week like we had with Crosby. We play Friendswood and we get beat, but they were the eventual state champions in 2A. So Coach Sharp, they worked us hard, but they kind of understood that, what we were up against. So then we play a team named Orange St. Mary's, and they're from Orange, Texas, and they're a Catholic school, and they were good. But Paul Dunlap returns a kickoff for about an 80-yard touchdown, and we win the game 7-0. The first game is Shepherd, and they had just moved up from B classification to A in our district, and they were supposed to be good. Well, at that time in our dressing room, the boys' dressing room was right here. The girls was right here, and that's where the visiting team would dress. And the only thing in between us was this door. And before the game, they, on Shepherd, on the other side of that door, start beating on that door. And we're going to kill Barbers Hill and all this stuff. And I'm looking around because I'm telling you, it scared me. I mean, I'm 14 years old. They're big over there. Dunlap and Elliott and Nayland and Hargraves. They took care of them. I believe we beat them 32-0. And that was the start of the dominance of Barbers Hill for the next several years. A couple of weeks later, we get ready to play Tarkington. Coach Sharp, for some reason, again, starts me in place of Paul Dunlap, which I have no idea why, but he left me in the whole game against Tarkington, and I played, and I scored 3 touchdowns that night. And that was my first belief in starting to learn that, okay, maybe I can play. There were 3 teams that year in our district. West Hardin was picked to win it. They had a quarterback named Kelton Hendricks who was very good, who had transferred in from Deer Park. He was Deer Park starting quarterback. And now he's West Hardin against us. And then Hardin, Texas was supposed to be a good football team. So we face West Hardin first. And this game is tough. West Hardin was good. But I got another break. We're down on about the 15-yard line, and the score is 12-7. Yeah, 12-7. They're beating us. They scored 2 touchdowns, and but they couldn't kick. So I guess they tried it, and we stopped them both times. So we're down on about their 15-yard line, and for some reason, Coach Sharp turns around and says, Doucette, get in the game. So I go in, Paul comes out, and he had sent in another player with the play, and it was going to be a tailback run through the 4-hole. And Dwayne Elliott looked up and said, no, we're running 21 trap pass. And, well, that's to me. He changed the play himself. called 21 trap pass, which he fakes the ball to the wing back. I slip out into the flat. He rolls out. He throws me the pass. I score a touchdown. We go ahead 14-12. Then we go on and beat them 21-12. And at that time, I'm high as a kite. I'm ecstatic. I got to play in that game, score a touchdown that puts us up ahead. And I'm just still knowing I ain't Paul Dunlap, okay? But that I had got to do that and contribute to this team. We go on to play Hardin. I think about 2 weeks later, I think we played Lumberton or somebody in between, and we play Hardin. Hardin is supposed to be the really good team. Well, Dwayne Elliott, I think, completes 18 out of 21 passes. I think all 18 of them went to James Clark, I believe. It was a phenomenal night, and they beat. And I say they, because I think I played on the kickoffs and the kickoff returns. I don't think I played another. Those guys beat Hardin 33-0. And it was a very phenomenal football game, and we won the district. First time Barbers Hill's ever in the Class A playoffs. We faced Magnolia, and they were good. But they lined up with 8 guys on the line. That was their defensive alignment. And 3 defensive backs. There were no linebackers. It was 8 guys on the line, and they were big. They probably averaged 210. And there were some 230s in there and some 180s, but they were much bigger than us. And one of the most phenomenal plays that I ever got to witness from Barbers Hill was in the Magnolia game. And I mean, those huge guys were just getting beat by these little Barbers Hill Eagles. We get toward the end of the game, and we are ahead 7-3, and they score a touchdown. So they're ahead 9-7, and they get ready to kick the extra point. Well, they had already kicked the field goal. They had a good kicker. And we know, man, there's not much time left. How are we going to, And they get ready to line up, kick that extra point, and they go to kick it, and Robert Nayland blocks that extra point with just a superhuman effort to bust through their line and block that extra point. So it's 9-7. We have very little time left, maybe 2 minutes, which is not much time for a high school team to run down and score. They had moved Jabbo up with us in the playoffs. So Jabbo and I are the only two freshmen on the team, but Jabbo is a superb kicker. But Tommy Clark, who had never played football before in his life, was a senior, and he had become our kicker. So we get down. Dwayne Elliott drives them down, Paul and them, Bubba Barber, Gino and them driving the ball. We get down in field goal range with 12 seconds left. And it's time to kick this field goal. And we got Jabbo standing here. Now, Tommy Clark, extra point wise, was kind of like a 50-50 guy. Maybe a little better than that. But, you got Jabbo here, who it's like almost a sure thing. Sharp would never put Jabbo in that position as a freshman. And Tommy Clark kicks the field goal. We beat Magnolia. 10-9. Oh, what a super effort by the Barbers Hill Eagles. We face Tidehaven, who was the Class A state champion in 1967. I'm only going to say this because it only ever happened to me one time in my career, to where I believe we got beat because of a bad referee call. I believe we're ahead 14-10 with about 4 minutes left in the game. Tidehaven has the ball, and they're on about their own 40-yard line. They're lined up. They come to the line of scrimmage. They line up, and their offensive line jumps. Our defensive line jumps. And I heard the whistle, but their quarterback just takes the ball and looks around, and everybody just kind of look at it. He just takes off running around the end. Well, he's running down the sideline right in front of the bench here, and Coach Capella starts hollering. He's the first one to realize what was going on. Starts hollering at Paul Dunlap, "Paul, catch him, tackle him." Paul runs him down and tackles him, but it's on about the 5-yard line. And they give them that ball. They give them, everybody's just standing around looking. He's the only one running. And just when you jump off sides, the play's over. They scored the touchdown, the go-ahead touchdown, and beat us 16-14, I believe, was what the final score was. And that is the only time in my career ever where I believe the referees absolutely blew a call so bad that it cost us. I saw referees make some bad calls, but I never believe it cost us a game except for that one right there. And otherwise, Paul Dunlap and those bunch would have been playing in the quarterfinals because they had beaten Tidehaven. We would barely get a write-up in the Baytown Sun when we won a game. It'd be a little bitty thing that freshman year. After that, it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we started getting write-ups in the Liberty papers and the Houston papers and everywhere else because Gene Sharp brought really good football to Barbers Hill. And Barbers Hill players were ready for it.
I understand the 1969 season had an incredible turnaround. Could you walk us through that season?
So we get beat our first 4 games. And we get beat pretty good. We were 0-4 and not very good, but improving every week. And we go into district play. We had been picked like 3rd in the district again. They had picked like Warren and Hardin to beat us, and we went undefeated in district again. And I'll say this about Drexel Cox and that bunch of seniors. Drexel Cox had the least amount of talent of any running back that Barbers Hill has ever put on the field. And he was one of the best that ever played. He just refused to be tackled. 2 guys would hit him, and I do not know how it was that he was still standing up, but he would still be going and still be running. And he had balance, just unbelievably good balance. And he just couldn't tackle. But he never really showed that all until his senior year. We go to Magnolia again in my district in 1969, and that year we beat Magnolia by 30 points. 30-something to nothing or whatever. Then the next week, we meet Schulenberg, who becomes our nemesis 2 years later. And Schulenberg is a really good football team that we had a chance to beat. We weren't the better team. They were the better team. But we were beaten in Memorial Stadium in Baytown on a very, very cold night, 14-10. And we had a chance to beat them, and we just couldn't get it done.
1970 season had extremely high hopes of a state championship. Coach Sharp had special T-shirts made for every varsity player that read State 70. Tell us about that season.
So the junior year was going to be the year that Barbers Hill wins the state championship, Class A football. We had an all-senior offensive line, so we were loaded. We were experienced, and we were very, very good football team. We start out the season. That year we're supposed to play Crosby. And Crosby High School and Crosby Drew finally integrated. Now, Barbers Hill had integrated in 1965. Here we are, we're in 1970, and Crosby is just now beginning to integrate. They're two 2A high schools, and they're going to integrate them, and it ain't going good. So we get canceled. We don't get to play Crosby that year, and it's a shame. So the first game is Anahuac High School, and Anahuac is good at that time. And they have this football coach named Hot Dog Thompson, Gene Sharp's nemesis at that time. Hot Dog had moved from Orangefield to Anahuac. And they had a offensive guard and defensive tackle. He was one guy, senior, who they were pushing for All-State and mentioning him as being a blue chip recruit for college. And this was the first time I had ever seen one player take out revenge on another player because maybe he had a higher status state-wise and recruiting-wise than he did. And that kid was Keith Elliott, our right guard. That All-American that they were promoting had to play over Spanky. When Spanky was offensive guard, he was the defensive tackle. And when he was the offensive guard, Spanky was the defensive tackle. That was a hard-fought game, and we beat them 7-0. But that wasn't the story. The story of the game was, because Keith Elliott played right in front of me, offense and defense. I ran behind him when I was on offense, and he was on offense, and he was a defensive tackle, and I was the linebacker right behind him. So I got to see him ever play. Well, let me tell you, this by the middle of the third quarter, this All-American tackle had tears running down his face and blood running all out of his mouth. He was not up to playing Keith Elliott, man on man. That was not a good place to be, and it sure wasn't for that kid that night. I felt sorry for him because I knew who Keith Elliott was. But Keith introduced himself to Anahuac that night. The next week, after the Anahuac game, so we're 1-0, in comes Friendswood High School. they have a quarterback named Kent Ballard, who's All-American. Goes to Rice University, then transfers from Rice to Oklahoma State, and was a starter up there. And he is a player. So they like to run bootlegs, and they were good. They had a lot of talent, a lot of good running backs. But what I remember most about that game was Kent Ballard was about 6'1", 200 pounds or so, and maybe a little heavier. Just really, really strong. But he would try and run a bootleg out around Beaver Trousdale's side. Now Beaver is 5'4", maybe 5'5", 120 pounds, but he could run. I mean, he could run. He was our starting leg on the 440 relay, and he was tough. But he'd run out there, and he was like a dog on Kent Ballard's leg, but he wasn't turning loose. And he just holding on to Ballard, and Ballard's trying to drag him, and finally he'd take Ballard down. And it was like, that's where Beaver started really getting his fame from. So we go on in the Friendswood game, and they go on and they beat us that year. Ballard is a senior, so I don't have to face him again the next year, but he was a fine player. Second best team in the district was supposed to be Warren High School. We traveled to Warren to play them, and Mike Armstrong is hurt. They start the game out, they throw the ball for a touchdown, then they throw the ball and make that 2-point conversion, and we're behind 8-0. Well, this ain't a good place for us to be, because the week before we had not played very well against West Hardin, and Coach Sharp tried to kill us again. So, and we got our stud running back out. But that night, Coach Sharp, I guess, decided since he wasn't going to, since Armstrong wasn't there, he was going to let me run with the ball. And I was voted Texas back of the week. I scored 5 touchdowns. I had about 150 yards rushing, and we beat them, I think, 72-8. At that point, you know, the rest of the district kind of knew that, well, this is over with for this year again.
1970 playoff season started off with St. Augustine, which had some similarities with your childhood heroes from Hull Day Zeta. Care to explain those?
Uniform, black jerseys with red numbers, red stripes down the side, and red Wolverines on the side of their black helmets, which was exactly the uniform that they wore at Hull Day Zeta. So it was like, here is this great football team we're fixing to play, and they're dressed like what used to be my heroes. It's like a bad form of deja vu. In fact, the only time I ever saw Gene Sharp worried and mad. He thought we had a real good shot at winning the state championship that year, and we thought so too as players. But up in East Texas, there was this town called San Augustine, and they had combined 2 big 1A schools, black school and a white school. And they were the San Augustine Wolverine. They were a good football team. We had 1 loss. They were undefeated. They were very talented. And Coach Sharp, before that week, I was in his office, and he was almost ranting, saying to the point that we shouldn't be even having to play these people. We shouldn't be, they are not in our classification. They should be a big 2A school. Anyway, so that scared me a little bit because I'd never seen him like that. So I'm going, golly. But he's Gene Sharp. Psychologically, he knows what to do. So we go to school the next day, and they say, go out there and look in our football field and see what happened. We go out and look in the field, up in the stand, and somebody out in the middle of our football field has burnt a big S for sand and an A for Augustine. Oh, them St. Augustine players came over here and burned y'all's football field up. The next night, I guess it was Thursday night, it's about 10 o'clock. Mama and my little brother and my little sister, they're already in bed. Me and Daddy's up. They should go to bed about 10. And all of a sudden, there's a knock on the door, on the front door. And who is that? We go to the front door, open the door, and a shotgun goes off. Boom! And it's Gene Sharp, Robert Capella, and Coach Richardson, and they're out Wolverine hunting. Because we're going to play the St. Augustine Wolverines. And they went to every player's house and shot that shotgun off. And those are some of the things that Gene would do to get you. And of course, he had put up all kind of papers on the newspaper articles about St. Augustine's teams and this and that. That was probably as clean and a hard-hitting, two teams equally matched game. Phenomenal on both sides. Not one penalty called in that game. For years, guys that had seen the game, Barbers Hill guys said that they believe that was the best high school football game they had ever seen. And it was matched. It was tit for tat the whole game. Well, I think we ended up beating them 23-17, something like that. But had we played them 10 times, they'd probably beat us 5. Strange to say that you were proud of your opponent because they were such a good competitor. Not one dirty thing. Not one word said. You know, we'd always play. We would hear the other team, they run in their heads. Not this team. This team was as much like us as it was almost like a mirror. So I've always appreciated what they brought to the football field. Dang shame that one of us had to lose. But that was a bi-district game of 1970, and to me, when that game's over with, Armstrong and I are sitting on a bench beside each other, which we hardly, in the dressing room, which we hardly ever did. But it was just kind of, we'd just look at each other, acknowledging that we'd kind of been through a war.
Following the St. Augustine game, Barbers Hill met Groveton in the regionals. Tell us about that game and its aftermath.
The next week, we meet Groveton, who I didn't know anything about Groveton. They were the Indians, never heard of them. At best, mediocre football team. I just really don't understand how they actually got into the show this late. We beat them, I believe it was 51-8. I think David Eves was the star of the night with like 3 touchdowns and 98 yards rushing or something. Just, okay, I'm going to take this game over, and Eves did. That was a pretty good game. Not a great game for us, but a pretty good game. Well, we get to Barbers Hill Monday, and you'd have thought we had gotten beat. Gene was so mad at us he couldn't see straight. We all knew we didn't play great, But we had played St. Augustine the week before. We're playing a mediocre, and we knew they were mediocre when we went into the game. We knew they were not St. Augustine. But after this Groveton game, this is the episode where they took us into the plowed field. Now, bear in mind, this is after the regional game. We're getting ready to go play White Oak for the quarterfinals. Mike Barber, Winford Wilburn, Joe Stevens, coached by Andy Griffith, the assistant coach at Hull Days Zeta when I was growing up, who were all my heroes. They took us out in that plowed field, and we practiced, and we practiced. And I'm thinking the whole time, my gosh, Armstrong is over here who's got 2 bad ankles. We're playing in clods, this big around that are as hard as rocks. There's no difference between gumbo mud that's been disced up and a rock. And we're out there and we're scrimmaging to death on this. And it's the same thing. Gene takes every player that's not on the starting offense and puts them over there on defense, and we run our offense, just run at them till like it was just unbelievable. We get all the way down to the canal, which is a good half-mile away that we've scrimmaged. So we've run a half mile. We run a half mile 4 yards at a time against our first team offense against maybe 27, 28 players over there, and we're making 4 or 5 yards. And it wasn't matter. It wasn't like we was making first downs or whatever. We was just going to run the play however many long it took to get to that canal. And then we have to run back. They're screaming at us. Capella's running, they're screaming at us. We run all the way back. We get back finally to school property, and they let us stop. And I'm stopped, and right beside me is James Tilton, our tight end and defensive end. And his eyes are sunk back in his head about this far. But I can tell, because I've been knowing him since my whole life. He's wanting to say something to me. He's wanting, but I can't talk. He can't talk. We got no air. There's not enough in Texas at the air in Texas at that time. Finally, after we get our breath, he looks at me and just incredulous. He just can't believe and he goes, Doucette, who won that damn game? I said, James, I don't know. I don't know anymore.
The 1970 season comes to a heartbreaking end with a White Oak game. Tell us how that game unfolded.
We made some mistakes that game that we shouldn't have, but White Oak came to play. They were well coached. They had 2 running backs that ran below a 10 flat 100. They came in first and second at the state meet that year, 100-yard dash and 220. One went to Louisiana Tech and was a star, and the other went to South USL, University of Southern Louisiana, and was a star in the Grantland Rice Bowl. Then Mike Barber, who was their quarterback, went on and played tight end for the Oilers for several. He was an all-conference tight end at Louisiana Tech, and he could play. We're ahead of White Oak, 14-6 at halftime, and we're feeling pretty good. We've got them contained, and then the second half, it just blows up. They start running they run a kickoff back, a punt back. Then they had a couple of draw plays, a sprint draw, that just kind of spread us out just enough that those guys that could run 9.6, 9.700s, we just couldn't catch. I mean, nobody we had could run like that except for maybe Wayne Follis. But they were just a really good football team, really well coached, and they beat us. And that kind of ended what Gene Sharp thought was going to be our best, by far our best chance.
What were some of the early expectations of your senior season in 1971, and how did that season start off?
Myself, Mike Armstrong, and Jabbo Leonard are the captains that year and our senior year. And we're sitting in Frank's Cafe, which was owned by Frank Sylvia, who was my future father-in-law, which was right up its corner of Loop 207 and Highway 146. And we're sitting there talking about the upcoming football season. And Coach Sharp's going, I just don't know. I don't know what kind of football team we're going to have. And I told him, we're going to have a good football team. Luke Durden, Mike Pomacall, James Tilton, Ricky Herbie, Johnny Hughes, Kenny Fisher had given their heart and souls to Barbers Hill football. We go out. Of course, Wayne Follis is a wide receiver. Mike Armstrong's tailback. I'm fullback. Eves is wingback. Yabbo's quarterback. This is returning backfield. We don't have one guy returning in the offensive line, but we got our guys. And here comes the Crosby Buffaloes and Dragons and whatever they were, two schools put together. I'm not sure they even had a name by then. And they were big and they were fast. We beat them 14-0. And one of the other stories that came into this was we had a young man named Larry Mattingly move in from Crosby. Larry became our starting safety. Well, right off the bat in that Crosby game, because I didn't know much about Larry. I'd watched him for 2 weeks, 2 days, and I mean, he would hit us and that, but he had never really been put in a position where he had to hit me or Armstrong or Eves. You know, he was just the whole time. Well, that game, they had a running back named Ray Cotton, who ended up going to Lamar. This guy was a player. Like the first or second play of the game, we kicked off to them. They hand Ray the ball, and I've been caught by, I believe, the center. Herbie's getting kicked out by the guard, and Cotton's running right through here. And this bullet comes up, and Larry Mattingly hits Ray Cotton in the mouth so hard. They just, right there, and it's dead. And I never worried about Mattingly again because he flat smacked Ray Cotton. And I'm going to tell you, I was a little bit concerned about tackling Cotton myself up until that. And now I know Mattingly can do it, I can do it. And Cotton never got nothing the rest of the night. And he's a player now, and good guy. Larry Mattingly showed that he wasn't scared of anybody from Crosby. And he became a heck of a safety for us. So we beat a good, big 2A school, 14-0. The next game, we played Friendswood, who had been way deep in the state playoffs, 2A playoffs the year before. They had a lot of guys returning. First play of the game, we were supposed to score a touchdown. Wayne Follis had even told his dad, watch the first play of the game, we're going to score a touchdown. Or the first play, we get the ball. Because we're going to throw Nanny Hitch, where Wayne Follis takes 2 steps down the field and backs up 2 steps. Jabbo takes the ball, backs up, throws it right out there. And Follis, we know, one-on-one, you ain't nobody in the country can grab him. Maybe some good college defensive back can, but nobody in Class A football can. And Wayne drops the blooming football, hits him right in the bread basket, and he drops it. And he just looks at it like. So, but Gene, he's pretty sharp. Next play calls 96 trap, which is arms. It looks just like another pass. But Jabbo's backing up, and it's an inside handoff to Armstrong, who they trap right out here on the defense. James Tilton and Ricky Irby and Luke Durden, they trap the defensive end out there. Armstrong runs about 80 yards for a touchdown, and we ended up beating them like 23-9, and it was never close. It was never close. That was one game we could have run up to score some, and Gene wouldn't do it because he thought highly of Friendswood. He thought highly of those teams. So we've beaten our second 2A school. And then the next week, we play Anahuac, our third 2A school, where Hot Dog Thompson is the coach again. And this is a story I'll tell you about Coach Sharp, about the difference between playing good, playing hard, and not playing what he thought was playing hard. Because this game, I proved that you could play really bad as long as you were playing hard. This Anahuac game, he breaks, because he wants to beat Hot Dog, he breaks out these white jerseys that we've never, beautiful, just got the Barbers Hill eagle on them. I mean, the actual eagle, Smadaka, the eagle. We step on the field at Anahuac, and I can't do anything but fumble. They hand me the ball, I run for 13, 14 yards, get tackled, and fumble. Armstrong, David Eves take the ball. We go all the way down to the 5-yard line. They hand it to me. I fumble. I fumbled 4 times in the first half. And I'm just beside myself. I'm just, but he never Sharp never pulls me, never says a word to me. Because he knows I'm going crazy trying to figure out why I'm fumbling. Anyway, at halftime, Coach Capella, well, he says something. He's not like Gene. Coach Capella just got me by the jersey. What in the hell is wrong with you? And Coach, the only thing I can figure is feel this slop, and I was so sweaty that I sweated terribly, phenomenally bad. It was like a slime, and the football was going here, and it was squirting out like a pig. So he sprayed my whole jersey down with what they call tough skin at that time. I never fumbled again. But at halftime, I think we're ahead 14-12 or 14-13, one of the two. And generally at halftime, we come in, we just all gather up. It wasn't like we had any big meeting or anything like that. But it was so hot out there and so miserable that night. Armstrong takes all of his clothes off. I mean, which he never did. I mean, it's just, a guy. You've been playing with Mike Armstrong for 5 years. You know Mike Armstrong. Here he is. He just takes his stuff off, which is kind of like against the rules. Like with Coach Capella, you didn't set on your helmet. You didn't unbuckle your strap, your chin strap. You didn't take your helmet off because that was your war bonnet, and you wore it all the time. Well, Armstrong, he doesn't strip down. He's just wearing nothing but some pants because it is hot. And of course, I'm beside myself because I'm fumbling every step of the way. And Gene walks in, and I think he wanted to chew us out a little bit, which was not like him to do that at halftime. But I think he wanted to this time. And he looked at Armstrong over there without his pads off, this and that. And he looked at me with my head down and my hands going, I don't know. And he just said, well, later on, I found out, he said, I just went and sat down, smoked a cigarette, which Gene liked to smoke. So we come back out in the second half, and we kicked their butt. We ended up beating them, I believe it was 41-13. And even then, there was another game. It could have been somewhat worse. So after that game, the next week, same place, Frank's Cafe, me, Armstrong, Jabbo were sitting up there. And Coach Sharp used to love to go up there and just sit and drink coffee. And that's where he would visit with the community. And but this time, I don't know how, this wasn't something we did every week, but somehow we ended up there again. And Coach Sharp said, I don't know what to make of this team. He said, I don't know how good we are. He said, we have beat he said, y'all have beat 3 really good football teams. And it's just not what I thought would be this year. Now, I'm going to tell you, I didn't know we'd be this good. I didn't know that we could go out and beat Crosby, just manhandle Friendswood, and just destroy Anahuac. I didn't know we could do that. This is where the courage of those guys who have been playing together basically since first grade came into play.
After a very successful start to the season, how did things pan out in the district schedule?
There were 3 teams supposed to have been pretty good in our district that year. West Hardin, Warren, and Hardin. And we had beaten West Hardin, and here comes Warren. And they were a pretty good football team, and they had some pretty talented guys over there. But they had the worst luck of any football team I ever saw in my high school career. Jabbo kicked the ball off to them to start the game, and Warren thinks they got a chance. I mean, I could say the names of those guys, but I'm not going to. But, I mean, I knew them because we ran track against them, been playing against them for 4 years, played basketball against them. I knew them. They were good players. They could run, big. Jabbo kicked the ball off. They fumbled the kickoff. We recover. Mike Armstrong scores the next play. First play we run, score. 7-0, and there's like 7 seconds gone off the clock. We kick off again. They hold on to the ball. First play from scrimmage, they fumble again. We recover. Next play, touchdown. We're ahead 14-0, and there's like 14 seconds gone off the clock, or maybe 20 seconds gone off. We kick off again. They fumble, and we recover. Next play or the next play after that. Anyway, it's 21-0, and we've played for 42 seconds. At the end of the first quarter, it's 42-0. And clock ends. The first 12 minutes is gone. It's 42-0. And Coach Capella turns around. Okay, guys, let's go. Let's go. I said, Coach, where are we going? It's halftime. No, Coach. It's the end of the first quarter. He said, and Coach Capella goes, oh my God, what a ass whipping. And it was a beautiful thing to see from him. It's hard not to have fun when you're playing that well. We were having fun.
First playoff game of the 1971 season was against Pineland, West Sabine. Tell us about that game.
Going to play Pineland, West Sabine. Again, another team that I'd never heard of. I guess they were pretty good in their district, but they weren't very good. The thing that happened that night that probably cost us the state championship was Steve McCorkadale. They had run a crackback block and just destroyed his knee. And Steve was a good defensive end. He was a good player, and it hurt us bad because what the coaches did, they took Mike Armstrong, our premier tailback, put him at defensive end down in a 4-point stance. Well, Mike had never in his life played down in a 4-point stance in a lineman position to where he's hitting somebody firing off into that right there. I had done it probably 10 plays in my life and knew I didn't want to ever do any of that again. But Armstrong, being the stud that he was, just went out there and started playing defensive end and running back.
Second playoff game was against Hubbard. What was the plan going into that game?
We get ready to play Hubbard. They are a wishbone team, triple option. Well, I don't know which one of the coaches figured it out, but one of them did, and they come in the second day on Tuesday. The first day was just our general workout. The second day we started practicing they started doing scouting reports and this and that on Tuesday. And they said, okay, here they are. They're a good team. But they make a mistake. And, okay, what is that? Every time they run option right, their center blocks right. If they run option left, their center blocks left. If they're going to pass, he immediately goes into a pass. And they picked that up in the film. So Larry Mattingly, our safety again, all week long, all he did was watch film. Watch film, watch film. So as soon as they run the play, as soon as the ball snapped, we got an extra defensive player right there against that wishbone, against the triple option. And they did nothing. They did nothing. They were a good defensive team. We beat them we scored 21 points. Beat them 21-6. I actually don't remember how they got their points, but it was, again, coaching by our staff that they didn't have a chance.
The long-awaited rematch with the Roughnecks of White Oak was the next playoff game. What are your memories?
We were ready for our arch nemesis, the White Oak Roughnecks, with Mike Barber and coached by Andy Griffith. And the one thing I remember about that team in particular was they had a defensive tackle who was about 5'10" and weighed about 240. And he would just get down in like a wrestler's grunt looking match right there on the offensive line. And he was supposedly a bad boy, So we're White Oak beat us a year before. We've been planning to work on beating them for a year, and we're pumped up and we're ready to go. And Gene has put in these other things to try and help us beat them. And we start out, they kick the ball to us, and we're on about our own 15, 20-yard line. I don't remember what play we start to run, but Armstrong fumbles. They recover. And they kick a field goal right off the bat. I mean, we're behind 3-0. The only thing was good was they ran 3 plays and didn't get a yard. So we knew, okay. But that's the same way the first half was the year before. You know, we went ahead the year before 14-6, and they hadn't gained nothing. Slowly, we're starting to hammer them. This just goes back to the big defensive tackle that's standing there. Coach Sharp and all his genius, he calls, we're going to whip his butt right off the bat. We're going to send Doucette and Eves after him. We're going to run 44 double power. He calls 44 double power. Me and Eves, we're fixing to knock this guy out. He just splits us like cordwood. Just boom. I go that way, Eve goes that way, and he kills Armstrong. It's just like a bear slapping him down. It's like, oh my gosh, what have we run into here? At that point, he ran 42 power, which meant that Irby was going to block down in, and him and Luke would hit this guy. So Luke hit this guy on his what had been his right in here, and Irby hits him over here at the angle and takes him plumb out past the center. So Irby comes back to that guy ain't nothing. What's the matter with y'all? And Luke said, well, I tell you, don't hit him straight on, I'll tell you that much. So from that on, we did whatever we wanted to with him, or the linemen did whatever they wanted to with him, and we just tried to run past him. And but we began to take our offensive line and defensive line. Kenneth Barra, who was playing the right defensive tackle position, was playing against a sophomore guard, and all week we had been Bubba, Kenneth Barra, we called him Bubba, we'd been telling him, that sophomore, you got to whip his butt. You've got to. But Kenneth Barra come ready to play. And he began to be in their backfield every play. And, of course, Luke was playing right in front of me. Luke was fast as lightning. He could get off the ball quicker than anybody I've ever seen. And so they had lost their 2 really great running backs. They were gone, and they had just one good running back left. And we were able to just keep on him and keep him from doing anything. I think he had less than 50 yards on the night. Andy Griffith decided that he'd take his great quarterback and go to passing the ball on us, and I think we intercepted him either 4 or 5 times. Our defensive backs and linebackers, cornerback, wasn't me. I know Irby got one. I know Follis got a couple. I think Johnny Hughes got one, and I think Eves or Mattingly got another one. Anyway, if they threw it, we caught it. So it was a good night. The best play of that night that I remember is it was a 3rd and 7. I knew Barbara was fixing to drop back pass, and I knew that center couldn't keep me out. So without telling anybody, I blitzed, and I caught Barbara full back there, and I dumped his butt. And when I got up, we were so fired up. This was pretty much the first of the game. Mike Pumacall is standing over Mike Barber, and Pumacall's going, kill him! Just kill him! Right now, kill him! And I'm pushing Pumacall away But we were our team was that pumped up. It was only 14-3 was the score, but once we got to 14 points and our defense was playing as well as it was, it's like Gene just, okay, we're going to just play static. We're not going to do anything to lose the ball. We're not going to do anything that gives them a chance. They're going to have to make it. They're going to have to beat this defense now somehow. And he believed that they couldn't. And sure enough, they could. It was extremely rewarding night to go beat them. I mean, all the girls were giving you kisses and all the mamas were giving you hugs, and it was a good night for Barbers Hill.
One of the most exciting games in Barbers Hill history came in the semifinal game against Schulenberg. Could you describe that for us?
But then we get now to Schulenberg, which is in the quarterfinals. We're fixing to play the worst football game I have ever been in as a Barbers Hill Eagle. They'll say a team performed as poorly as we did that night. I don't know whether it was the letdown after playing White Oak. I don't know what it was. What I do know is that they kicked the ball off to us. We just drive it down their throat, no problem. Just right down there. It's first down after first down after first down. Get down on the 3-yard line. We run 21 trap. Eve fumbles. They've recovered. They throw Wayne Follis, our great wide receiver and defensive back, is running 103 fever. Well, they have a wide receiver, 6'3" or so, that can run, and Wayne is on him, and they run a kind of a fly pattern, and he gets past Wayne. Joe Demmel, their quarterback, throws the perfect in-stride pass to him. Boom, right there. Wayne makes an effort, hits the ground. They're ahead 7-0. Okay, no problem. We know. Kick it off to us. Just boom, 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 right down the field. This time we get down 28 sweep. Armstrong's running sideways to his right. Joe Demmel comes up, just takes the football away from him. Just takes it away from him and starts running the other way. Wayne Follis, 103-degree fever. I don't know where he came from, but he runs down Joe Demmel. Tackles him. They get the ball. So anyway, we hold them. They punt. We drive the ball back down again. This time, I fumble. Pitiful. Just pitiful. We were all three backs were just, I don't know what the deal was. But anyway, then they run that fly pattern again. He beats Wayne again. And, of course, when you're running 102, 103 fever, I only played one game in my life that way, and I did not play well. Well, Wayne comes back in the second half and catches a couple of balls to save the game at the end of it. So, he's kind of a hero. But we get down to the end of that game, and it's 14-0. 3 minutes, 29 seconds left. Jabbo had just thrown a interception, and it's like, dadgum, how are we going to lose to these people? I'm going, how is this happening? We ain't going to fumble anymore. We're not going to throw any more interceptions. The team that should have been there all night starts to show up. I believe it was a short punt, that's what it was. And we take the ball right back down. Armstrong starts just ripping them. Eves is ripping them. Jabbo throws it out there, touchdown to Follis, and it's 14-7. And we're kicking off, and now there's 2 minutes left. They snap the ball, and Joe Demo hands it to the running back, and I hit the two of them. The ball squirts loose. Ricky Irby gets the ball, and frankly, at that point, Schulenberg's in trouble. And we take the ball right back down, and I can't remember at that point, but there's like 45 seconds left on the game, and we're like a yard and a half out. They call timeout, and Jabbo goes to the sideline. We're 1 yard out behind 14-7 with just a few seconds left on the clock. Jabbo asked Coach Sharp, hey, do you want to just kind of stall a play or two and run all the time off before we score? And Coach Sharp, I think at that point, grabbed him by the face mask and said, no, I'm going to score right now. And so we went in and he ran the wedge play, 32 wedge, and I scored the touchdown and we tied it. We were pretty elaborately happy after that. And so Jabbo calming us down so we can kick the extra point, and I think we take a 5-yard penalty purposely. I think Jabbo took the penalty purposely because he knew distance and it just wasn't going to be a problem for the extra point. And he kicked it, and so it's 14-14. We kick off, and they fumbled the kickoff. Now I am for kicking another field goal because we're right down here in there. Let's kick this thing. Let's don't have a tie on our record. Now that's the kid in me. As the head coach, I would have done exactly what Gene Sharp did. No, we ain't doing that. We are way ahead on penetrations. We're winning this game, Kenneth. We're not tied. We're winning. But in my mind, I wanted the score to be 17-14 at least. But I didn't want to throw the ball or take a chance on doing anything crazy but I knew Jabbo kicked field goal and that we would block and that nobody's going to affect his kick. But Gene didn't, and we tied 14-14, and I think we had 6 penetrations, but we had somewhere I thought I saw that we had right at 300 yards rushing. Any other time, 300 yards rushing, we'd have 50 points on the board. But we didn't that night.
Finally, a state championship game. What stands out to you?
We went to Austin. It was a cold night. Wind blowing 16 to 20 miles an hour out of the north. They go down. They got a real good little running back named Noel. Not a very big guy, but just really shifty and really, really fast. And they were able to get him open on some sweeps 3 or 4 times. And if it had it not been for Larry Mattingly, who could run this guy down, he'd run him down and catch him, and then we'd hold him. And, but when you look at the statistics, Noel picked up a lot of yardage, but he did it only on about 3 or 4 plays. It was almost kind of like a Barry Sanders deal. He may run 10 plays and not get a yard and then run for 64. Well, that's kind of the way it was happening with Noel that night. And so it ended up, they kicked the field goal. Then we kicked field goal. Then at the end of the third quarter, we have driven the ball down to, I believe, the 24-yard line. And we have the wind at our back. And the time is running out in the third quarter. And it's fourth down, and we don't call timeout. And it's a mistake. Should have called timeout. So now we swap ends. We've got a 41-yard field goal, and it's into the wind. So Jabbo, who had been kicking great all season and had been getting stronger, he was starting to kick down balls from 50, which he had never had that kind of range before. But he was maturing and getting his man muscles instead of his boy muscles. And so it's 41-yard field goal. He kicks it. If you took a tape measure and measured exactly the middle between those goalposts, that's exactly where the ball hit on the crossbar and bounced back at us. That much more, and it's in. But neither here nor there. That was, we all did everything we could do. Fourth quarter, they attempted another field goal, and it was wide left. And the guy behind the kicker back there, which was where I was at, because I had rushed and got through and got close to blocking it, but didn't get there. But I run up to the backfield, the referee in the backfield, and he's acting like he's wanting to do this. And I'm going, no, it's bad. It's bad. And sure enough, then the guys under the goalpost are going, no, it's, wide left. And so anyhow, that was the final game. I wish we'd have called timeout with a 41-yard field goal with the win, or wish we would have thrown the ball to Wayne Follis some more. Wayne, right off the bat, I think in the first quarter, we throw it. He runs for a touchdown. He stepped somewhere in there. He stepped on the line. And I asked Wayne when he come back, did you step on it? He said, yeah. So, we weren't, the referee made a good call.
Give us a description of how the Barbers Hill offense functioned when you were playing.
As I ran into players that we had played against, and they would say, guys from Hardin, because my whole family was from Hardin. My dad graduated from Hull Days Adam, my mom from Hardin, Texas. I had kin folks all over that area, West Hardin, all that. And they would say, man, we knew exactly what y'all were going to do, but we just couldn't stop it. And I would tell them, you didn't know what we were going to do. Me and Armstrong and Neves and Jabbo were doing the same thing. Them guys up front, they had 5 different ways of blocking you. And we would coach would start out calling blocking it 42 out. See how that worked. Then 42 power. Then 42 gut and 42 trap. And till when we found out, because we knew that your coach was you're playing Barbers Hill, we're going to move you out 6 inches in this game to play, because this is what Barbers Hill does. Well, okay, you moved out. Now you've moved out to the out block. If you move in, you're to the power block. If you back up, you're to the trap block. So he would run, even though it looked exactly the same in the backfield, it was 5 different plays to the same hole. To the 2 hole, 5 different plays to the 4 hole, 5 different plays to the 6 hole, then to the 3 hole and to the 5 hole. Same thing. So you had 5 holes, but you had 25 plays that looked exactly the same that were all different. So that's the reason. And when I would tell them that, and then they'd start thinking about it and realize, now I know why they started hitting me from the left side when they should have been hitting me over here. And I played for Gene Sharp for 4 years and never learned a new play after my freshman year. In junior high, 7th grade and 8th grade, and okay, if it's a 42, then that means the tailback's going to get the ball. If it's a 31, it means the fullback's getting it. If it's a 21, the wingback's getting it. And if it's a 10, the quarterback's doing it. So it's all numbered out. Well, no, with Coach Sharp, the 40s it meant nothing as to who was getting the ball. It meant what series you were going to run. And the 40 series was all the cross bucks that we run. And the 30 series were all the traps and powers and this and that with me running the ball. And 36 pass was to Armstrong. So the number you called had nothing to do with who's getting the ball. It had to do with the series of what you were fixing to do to try and fool those guys over there. And he would experiment the playbook. We'd start out running the offense till he found what was working, and then he'd run that till they stopped it. And if they stopped that, then they just opened up something else.
We've heard from others about trips to Garner State Park. What do you remember about them?
I don't know who dreamed those up, but I think it was R.C. Porter and Earl Porter, Charlie Leonard, Mr. and Miss Elliott, I think were up there with us. I think Mr. and Miss Catterley. And of course, Charlie Leonard, now, Charlie believed that we should run a marathon every day. So, I mean, we'd get up every morning and we'd run. And we'd run, I don't know, 6, 7 miles, something like that. And we'd come back and eat breakfast. And it's Garner State Park. The river's there. There's girls. There's things, and then so we'd want to go do that. Charlie'd say, better run. Oh, Mr. Leonard, come on, Mr. I'm telling you, boys, the boys that's going to win the state championship, they out there running right now. While you over here playing in the river, they out there working. So he would try and shame you into those kind of things. And he did. It worked some. But then every evening we would play football and we'd either split up. But that junior year, there was another team up there. And I'm trying to remember where they were from, but they were from a good school. There were some other boys up there in another high school. And we played them. And it started out as touch. And that didn't last long. Pretty soon it didn't matter. It was head on. And I remember one time Lynn Jiggo was up there, and this guy was a big, hard dude. And he caught the ball, and Lynn hit him, and I thought he'd put him in the hospital. And this is no pads, no helmet, no nothing. Lynn laid him out. And then they did the same thing to us, somewhat. When it got down to it, we had taken the bigger schools' teams, and we had played them to a tie.
I know you hold the record for the most football games played at the varsity level in Barbers Hill history. Break that down for us.
12 games my freshman year, 12 my sophomore year, 12 my junior year, and 15 my senior year, for a total of 51 varsity games.
You talked earlier in your interview about being pushed to go above and beyond what was believed to be possible. Do you have an example of a player that exhibited this?
Of course, I meet Luke when I'm 9 years old, when he and I started into the 4th grade. And Luke is a funny guy, and he's always funny, and he was a little bit on the dramatic side also. And so the whole time we're growing up together, if you got a cut on your leg or you did cut somewhere and you were bleeding, Luke would just get sick at his stomach. he just, oh my gosh, I can't. And it was like that. And he was that way from 9-year-old till we're seniors and we're playing White Oak. And we are in the quarterfinals, and it's a tough ball game. And Luke is our strong guard and our strong defensive tackle. So he plays right in front of me when I'm on offense, plays right in front of me when I'm on defense. So I knew Luke. He comes back into the huddle. We're about the middle of the second quarter. And I know we can't do without Luke Durden. We have to have this guy. And Luke has a cut over his left eye, and blood is running all down his face, just running around his eyes. Now, this is a kid I've been knowing for all these years that if the sight of blood, if he saw it on anybody else, it would make him sick in his stomach and he'd have to turn away. So when I see that, I am scared to death. And I'm asking, Luke, are you okay? Are you okay, buddy? And he just looks at me and says, I'm fine. So all that fear that he had of blood went away when it come to him doing what he needed to do to play that ball game. And when somebody goes above and beyond what you consider their normal, I mean, we've already seen Luke, all of our players, do some really good things, go through some really hard things. Luke just puts that, somehow this phobia that he had his whole life, he just puts it aside for the team that night. And I've never forgotten it. And I always respected him for it. The kind of team we had.
Senior years are special. What did yours mean to you?
I could not have enjoyed more my senior year than I did playing with the guys. They were sure enough Eagles.
Our mission is to preserve the rich history of high school football, honoring the players, coaches, and schools that have shaped the game. While most may never move beyond the Friday night lights, in their moment, they are the heroes of their schools and communities. Few truly understand the dedication, sacrifice, and hard work it takes to build winning teams and culture. Through our channel, we strive to share and safeguard their stories, ensuring their legacy lives on for generations to come. If you, your team, or school have a story to tell about your high school football team, contact us at fdaynightheroes@gmail.com.